Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to disclose how much profit I made on my Subaru WRX when I sold it. This is something that we've talked about on the channel before, making money on your cars so you can kind of build up to the next car and eventually hit your dream car. This isn't supposed to be any type of flex or something like stupid. This is more just like motivation and kind of like for everybody that said this isn't possible and every other video I've made. This is another car that I've been able to do this with. And you know, it is partially because of the market, but it's also just because I hedged myself in a good position. So we're gonna talk about exactly how much I profited on the car. In this video, I've got my handy dandy notebook so we can look at all the numbers, and let's get straight into it. And guys, before we get too far into the video, if you enjoy content like this, learning about all the finances and the juicy information about cars, let me know in the comment section below. Give this video a like. If you're not already subscribed, I've got some really cool content coming out. So definitely feel free to subscribe or at least consider it. All right, so the WRX that I had a 2016 WRX that I bought 3.5 years ago. It's a base WRX. I paid $18,000 for it. I bought it up in New Hampshire. I'm in Boston, so I drove up north. I bought the car. It had a few things wrong with it. That's why I got such a good price for it. It had less than 20,000 miles. It had like 18,000 miles on it, I think. And yeah, you guys know the rest of the story if you follow the channel. If you haven't watched all the videos, I drove the car for about 3 years. I did lots of things to it. Put about 30,000 miles on it, and it was just a wonderful car. And I'm happy to say that I did sell it for a profit. I did make money on the car. There is a caveat, and I'll explain that in a second, but yes, it was a successful profit. So the caveat that I need to make, of course, I bought the car and drove it for 3 years, and I didn't make money, let's say, on top. Like, I didn't come out with more money after the entire experience because of things like insurance and gas, and of course, those are things that you have to consider if you're not just flipping the car. I could have, when I bought the WRX, fixed the problem and flipped it and sold it immediately for a profit, and then I would have actually profited. But what I really did is I drove a car and ended up with more money at the end for what the car was worth. It still cost me money in gas and insurance to enjoy the car. So my assumption in this video is that you have to have a car and you are going to drive and enjoy it. So everybody that's in the comment section below being like, oh, the cost of gas, well, that means your assumption, that means like your baseline is that you aren't driving anything anywhere ever, right? Which I don't think is a reasonable baseline for the majority of us watching this video. So this is more a video of not only not losing money on your car, like if you buy a brand new car, you sell it for 50% of its value after 3 years. It's not only losing money, but it's making sure when you sell that car after buying it, you're selling it for actually more than you initially bought it. And that is how you profit on a car, but more importantly, that's how you get closer to reaching your dream car or whatever you want in the future, or just being financially smart, which time and time again, I will say, is the most important aspect about enjoying cars, automotive hobbies, everything. It requires an immense amount of money, and it's amazing how many people in the comment section below say, like, you can't care about money if you're into cars, you just have to YOLO it. All those people are the people that will enjoy $30,000, $40,000 cars for the rest of their lives because they repeat the cycle of throwing all their money into a car and losing it because they make all these impulses. And that's what they believe automotive passions and hobbies are all about. Well, in reality, if those people ever want to drive or buy something and they don't want to like kill themselves at work, which they should be doing anyways because it's easy to retire early in this capitalistic world we live in, but those are the kinds of people that will never own the cars that a lot of us strive for. So if you repeat the trick that I'm about to tell you, well, I've actually already talked about how to make the money, so I'm not going to tell you that. I'm just going to reveal how much profit I made on this car, so we'll get straight into it. If you want to watch the video on how to profit, it was like 5 or 6 videos ago. So definitely go watch that video out because there's a wealth of knowledge and it's a really simple process to actually profit on these cars. Even when the market is normal, I mean, it's pretty easy. I've done it with every car, I would say. No, I mean, at this point, it's every car. The only car that I might not profit on is the truck that I'm currently driving, and that's because I bought it at the top of the market during COVID, and it didn't have that many problems that needed to be fixed just because I needed a decent truck for what I was using it for. So that car, my goal is to break even on it. I probably won't profit, but before that, with every other car that I've owned in my life, which has been a fair amount, I've always profited. And in some cases, I've made over 100% return on my initial investment. So it's all possible. But the WRX, because that's what you guys are here for, and that's why you're watching this video. So, handy dandy notebook. I apologize, I gotta read it off because these are the hard numbers. So I bought the car for $18,000 3.5 years ago. I put 30,000 miles on it over the 3 years. I enjoyed the car. It was my daily driver for about a year and a half of that time. It was my secondary weekend car for about a year and a half, so it was kind of split. But of course, I put 30,000 miles in 3 years, so 10,000 miles a year. That's a lot of driving for the most of us. You know, that's more driving than a lot of people. That's like almost at the 50th percentile for the entire US. So a decent amount of miles on the car. And I sold it for $22,000 stock. So just the car purchased stock versus sold stock, I sold it for $4,000 more than what I purchased it for. On top of that, because I wanted to mention this as well, I've always been a firm believer of buying as many of your aftermarket parts used as possible. Maybe not the little cosmetic ones that tend to like break or hard to reinstall, but like performance parts, typically if they're kept in good condition, there are definitely things that you can buy used, install in your car, and then you've gotten that part at a lower cost basis. I got lucky here. Usually this doesn't happen. Usually I buy my parts used for all my cars and then I sell them for similar what I paid for them. So I'm usually in and out for the same amount of money. But because the market's exploded, I actually made $1,300 on my part sales from buying them used to selling them. They sold, like my J-pipe actually sold for more than it was new originally, if you can believe that. So I got lucky with that. You know, on the car itself, I made $4,000. If you consider the part profit as well, I'm up 5.3 or $5,300. And that's pretty exciting. That's better than what I was hoping, especially after putting so many miles on the car. I really thought the WRX might be the first car that I only broke even on because I was like, all right, I'm gonna keep it for 3 years. It's actually the longest I've ever owned a car. Not the most miles I've ever put on a car, but the longest period of time I've ever owned a car just because I absolutely love that car. And I was like positive I was going to just break even. I did buy it at the time when I paid $18,000 for it. Its KBB value was about $21,500. So at the time it was worth a lot, and that's because I had less than 20,000 miles on it. And it was like early 2019. So it was only 3 years old, you know, had barely been driven, so it was worth a lot of money. How did I get such a good deal on it? I bought it with, like, the front bumper had a little bit of a dent and divot in it, and the wheels had some road rash on it, so there were little cosmetic things that I was able to haggle down. Again, that other video I talk about how to get a good deal, but that's basically what I did. Got a great deal, and I'm up 5.3K on the car. So that's all money that is gonna get reinvested into the next ride for the channel, and I rinse and repeat, and my goal eventually, I mean, long term, the goal is to get a LaFerrari. I mean, that, like, full transparency, that's the dream car, or a Pagani Huayra. Those are 7-figure cars though, so it's gonna be a long time before I get there, especially if I'm only making 5.3K, but 5.3K, that's like a 20% return. That's not actually a 20% return, it's a little bit more, but it's, you know, I'm not gonna think and do a little bit of math. It's more than a 20% return on the car over 3 years. And I hope to kind of rinse and repeat with the next cars, and we're gonna get there. I mean, the short-term goal is, you know, the next car on the channel will either be a Nissan Z or a Supra, depending on which manual version comes out first, and sometimes some relative about the price. And then we have a market correction. I'm gonna get an R35 for the channel. And then beyond that, I don't really know until the Pagani Huayra or the LaFerrari, but again, I'm assuming that's gonna be, you know, 20 years from now, because if I ever have that much money, it's certainly not going to go into that car until that money is money that I could potentially lose, because that's enough money to retire. Each of those cars, you could, if you had that amount of money, you could retire in the US. You could actually retire in like 90% of the US. You could retire in a high cost of living area, living lean, but you could do that for the amount of money one of those cars cost. I mean, living pretty lean, depends on your standard of living, but I could certainly retire it with that money. So first I'm gonna retire, and then I will go for that car. Fingers crossed. Hopefully nothing happens, knock on some wood, you know, barring any major life events. That's the goal. So again, guys, this is not meant to be a flex. Of course it's not a flex because it's not very much money, but it's something that I'm trying to instill with this channel and trying to instill with all you guys. Like, this is possible. You can do this, and this can get you to your next car. So if you're not driving a WRX right now and you're shooting for a WRX, these are the things you should do to get to a WRX. It's very achievable, especially if you're putting that sweat equity in, because a WRX isn't that expensive. So if you repeat this trick a couple times, you don't even have to hold the car for very long. As long as you're putting in that sweat equity and getting a good deal, you can make this happen. Long term, this is the best way to get into the car that you really want in the long term. I'm not sure why I'm holding that pen, but yeah, that's how much money I made profit-wise on the WRX. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next video. Later.